All right, so we are discussing standard form of a linear equation. Somebody tell me what standard form looks like.
AX plus BY equals C.
AX plus BY equals C. And remember, the letters, each of these letters stand for a variable or a number. Stand for a number, not a variable. These are the variables. My bad. Okay, so if you look at example 1, put this in your journals. You have negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 6. Is this in standard form?
Yeah.
Yes, because this is A, this is B, this is C. Make sense? So it says write the equation. In order to graph an equation, you have to put it in what form? Does anybody remember the form? My algebra students will. Y equals mx plus b, right? Slope-intercept form. Very good. So in order to get this standard form into slope-intercept form, we have to solve for what letter? Y. Very good. So how would I solve for y? What's my first step? To move the 2x, right? So how do I move that? Add it, because it's subtraction. So then I'm left with 3y, and I can't actually combine these because they both don't have an x. So I get 2x minus 6. Now how do I get the y by itself? Divide by 3. So then I divide everything on this side by 3 also. So y equals 2/3, because I'm not going to actually get a decimal. I'll just leave it as 2 divided by 3. Minus, what's 6 divided by 3?
2.
Very good. So this is now what form? So can I graph that? Easily. I'm going to rewrite it up here. Y equals, wow, that's a terrible y. 2/3 x minus 2. Is that what I got? All right, so graphing it. How do I graph this? What is the first thing I look at?
The 2.
The
-2.
Negative 2, and where do I put that?
The bottom.
On the y line, right?
Y line, yeah.
So I go down to negative 2, put a dot. What's my slope?
2/3.
So I go up 2 over 3. Right there?
Go to the right.
Always to the right.
Yeah.
And now you've graphed it.
That's it.
That's it. You've already been doing some of this. So what we're doing is we're taking the standard form of an equation, switching it to the y-intercept forms or slope-intercept form so that you can graph it.
So the hardest thing is like solving.
Is rearranging the equation. Absolutely. So let's practice. Get a piece of paper on your own number 1. We have x plus y equals negative 2. We are going to graph this. In order to graph this, I need to solve for y, correct?
Yeah.
What is my first step?
The 2.
The 2 is good. What letter do I have to get by itself? What letter am I trying to get by itself?
Y.
Y. So I need to move the other letter. How do I move the x? Subtract, because it's a positive x. So minus x. I get y equals negative x minus 2. Am I in slope-intercept form now? Yep. I'm doing a little graph over here. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do to graph it is look at what?
-2.
Down negative 2 on the y line. Everybody agree with Anthony?
Yeah.
Good, he's correct. What's my slope?
-1.
Negative 1. So from the y-intercept, I go down 1 over 1. And then I draw my line. You do have to graph this. You may use graph paper or you may sketch it. I don't care which one. Whatever you want to do. Okay, yeah.
What does it mean when you have a variable by itself in the graphing?
You're talking about this?
No, when you have the variable, I mean, if you have X by itself, or like a letter by itself.
Like this?
Yeah. Like.
There's an imaginary 1 in front of it.
Oh, okay.
The X is just the variable. It's actually a point on the graph, X, Y. If you have when you get to your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. See how the -2 is my b? There's no actual number in front of x, so you can always assume there's a 1 there, so that way you know that your slope is -1.
Oh, okay.
If there's no negative there, if it's just the letter x, then it's a positive 1.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Any other questions? All right, let's do number 2.
I have a question.
What's your question?
Where's the glue? They have glue.
It's in this drawer. Number 2, -1/2 x plus 2y equals 6. Again, we are graphing this, so I need to, this is what form? Currently? Standard form. I need to put it in what form? Say it louder.
Slope-intercept form.
Slope-intercept form. What is my first step? Crickets. Okay, I want to get this one alone, so I move this one, right? How do I move the -1/2 x? Yes, plus 1/2 x. So that's gone. I'm left with 2x on the left side. I can't actually combine those because the 6 does not have an x with it, so I just write 1/2 x plus 6. Am I done? No. Why? There's a hint for you. Because the y is not by itself.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
How do you get the y by itself?
You subtract.
You divide.
No, you divide.
Divide by 2, divide everything over here by 2. So y equals, what is 1/2 divided by 2? Look at this as a fraction. 1/2 divided by 2 over 1, because it's divided by 2. When you're dividing a fraction, you can flip and multiply. So I get 2 over 2, which is actually 1. So I have 1x plus, what's 6 divided by 2? 6 divided by 2.
It's about like 2, 3.
There we go. Okay, now I have it in slope-intercept form, yes?
Yeah.
I can graph it now. Look, 1x plus 3. Was it plus 3? All right, so graphing it. What's my first point? On which line? This is called the y-intercept, so we're going up on the y line. I almost hit the dot. Let me try again. There we go. What's my slope?
1x.
Well, don't include the x. The slope is what's in front of the x.
So you go up 1.
Up 1, over 1. Very good. Yeah, whenever you say slope, don't include the x. It's just the variable or the letter, the number in front of x. Graphed. All right, that was number 2. Any questions? All right, let's number 3. I have -2/3 x plus y equals 0. All right, what form is this? Standard form. So I need to solve for what form? In order to graph it, I need to put it in slope-intercept form. I'm just trying to get you to remember vocab, guys. All right, so in order to get into slope-intercept form, I have to solve for what letter?
And y.
Yes, so what's my first step?
You add.
Plus 2/3 x, because we want to move that over here. So that's gone. I'm left with y equals 2/3 x. Do I need to say plus 0?
No.
No. Can you say plus 0?
Yeah.
Sure, it's not wrong. But you can leave it without it. And now we're going to graph it. So I'm going to go to the next page. Sorry, I can't quite fit it all on one page, so I got to turn page to graph. All right, so what is the first point on the graph?
0.
0. Because there's nothing here. Remember, it was a plus 0? So 0. Put a dot right there in the middle. What's my slope? So I go up 2 and over 3. Very good. And then, ooh, I almost could draw a straight line. I'm terrible at straight lines on the computer. All right, this one is graphed. Any questions?
You
Oh.
always start at 0 when there's like a fraction.
No, you always start on 0 when your y-intercept is plus 0, or nothing there. The fraction is just always your slope here. It's up and over. All right, number 4. 2x plus y equals 5. What form are we in? Standard form. What do I need it in? So I need to do what? Solve for y. What's my first step?
So you minus.
Very good. Minus the 2x. So I'm left with y equals minus 2x plus 5. Why do I always put the x before the other part? Anybody know? Because slope-intercept form has the x stuff first. So I always write it first. That way it's automatically easy for me to tell, okay, my first point's at 5 and my slope is negative 2. That's why. So anytime I'm solving for y, I automatically put the x stuff first. All right, so let's graph this. Where's my first point go? Very good. On which line? The y line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's my slope?
You go 2, so you go. 2.
What kind of 2?
The negative 2, so you go down 2.
Very good. So I go down 2 and?
Right 1.
Correct. Very good. And then connect the dots. Ooh, I almost did. Don't worry, I won't judge you on your straight lines if you don't judge me on mine not straight lines. Very good. Any questions?
No.
Pop quiz. What kind of slope is this? Positive or negative?
Negative.
All right. You all passed. Good job. All right. Look at example 2. Grab your journals. We're going to graph x plus 3y equals negative 3 using intercepts. We did this once, but I feel like it's been a week. Do you remember how to find the x and y intercepts? X-intercept, y-intercept. Bet you my algebra remembers. We just did it too. To find the x or y intercept, you plug in a 0 for the opposite variable. So if I'm looking for the x-intercept, I'm going to put a 0 where the y is. So I'm going to say x plus 3 times 0 equals negative 3. Well, what's 3 times 0? 0, right? So x equals negative 3. So to write this as a point, because I want to graph this, I'm going to say negative 3 for the x. What's my y? 0, because I plugged in 0 for y. Okay. Now for the y-intercept, so I want to solve for y, so I put a 0 where the x is. So I'm going to say 0 plus 3y equals negative 3. Well, I don't need the 0 plus there. How do I solve for y now? How do you get y by itself? Divide by 3. So y equals, what's negative 3 divided by 3? 3 divided by 3 is 1. So then the point for this one, the coordinate, would be my x is 0, because remember I plugged in 0 for x, and my y coordinate is negative 1. So now I have my x-intercept and my y-intercept. Can I graph those? Yes. Absolutely. What did I do back here? If I'm going to find an intercept for one variable, what do I do to the other variable? I plug in a 0. That's the rule of thumb. If I'm finding the x, I put the 0 where the y is. If I'm finding the y, I put the 0 where the x is. And just solve. So what was my x-intercept? Negative 3 comma 0. What was my y-intercept? This is something you will use through Algebra 2 and Pre-Cal, actually. Finding the x and y intercepts. So if this is confusing, I need to know so I can help you. All right. So to graph this first point, where do I find it? I go on the x-line where? To the left, how many? 1, 2, 3. And then my y is 0, so I don't go anywhere up or down, right? It's called the x-intercept, so it's going to intercept the x-line. This is the x-line, this is the y-line. So where is my y-intercept?
Negative 1.
So I go down negative 1, and the x is 0, so I don't go left or right. So now do I have my two intercepts graphed? Draw a line. My algebra and geometry students are wishing they were still in this class. I can hear you guys back there answering the questions. All right, so you guys know how to find x and y intercepts now?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the rule of thumb to find the x or y intercept? What are you going to do? Gotta remember that, okay? All right, let's look at example 3. Real life application. We have apples and bananas. Let me take a picture. That's not a good picture. All right. You have $6 to spend on bananas and apples. I'm visual. When I hear a number I need to use, I write it down. We're going to graph the equation 1.5x plus 0.6y equals 6, where x is the number of apples, pounds of apples, and y is the number of pounds of bananas. Okay, what is the 1.5 and the 0.6 representing? Can anybody tell me?
The x and the y.
No, the x and the y are these two. What's the 1.5? Close. It's the cost.
Oh, the cost.
We're trying to find the pounds. That's what x and y are. $1.50 per pound of apples and 60 cents per pound of bananas. So this is how you set up an equation. I know I want to buy apples and bananas. My apples cost me $1.50 per pound. We don't know how many pounds we're buying yet. My bananas cost me 60 cents per pound. I don't know how many pounds I'm buying of bananas yet, so that's why there's a y there. And how much money do I have altogether? $6. So do you understand how they made the equation now?
Yeah.
So they want to find the x and y intercepts. Very good. I'm going to go to the next page. So we have 1.5x plus 0.6y equals 6. How do I find the x and y intercepts? What's the rule of thumb? How do I find the x and y intercepts? Giraldi knows. Come on, Sean. I believe.
I know what it is. I just don't know how to say it. Plug in 0.
Plug in a 0.
Variable.
Good. So let's find the x. Don't be shy. Just say it, guys. Find the x intercept first. So if I'm finding the x, where do I put the 0? Where do I put the 0?
Oh, 0.
Where the y-intercept is, or where the y value is. This is going to help me solve for x. I just make y a 0. Okay, so what's 0.6 times 0? 0. So I have 1.5y equals 6. How do I get the x by itself?
You divide.
Mm-hmm.
Divide, yeah.
So what is 6 divided by 1.5? 6 divided by 1.5 is 4. 1.5 times 4 would equal 6. Okay, so there's the x-intercept. You should be writing this in your journals, guys. Okay, so there's my x-intercept.
Snap. Wrote it as an O, you're not an
Let's find the y-intercept. I'll go back. Okay, to find the y-intercept, where do I plug my 0 at? If I'm solving for the y, where do I put my 0? Yes. So instead of x, I put a 0 here. What is 1.5 times 0? 0. So I have 0.6y equals 6. How do I get the y by itself? Divide by 0.6. I get y equals, what is 6 divided by 0.6? You can use your calculators, guys. Yep. So what was my x-intercept? Do you remember?
4.
4. And my y-intercept equals 10. So let's interpret this since it's a word problem. Let me turn the page here. So we knew 1.5x plus 0.6 y equals 6. What was the 6 talking about? What did that represent? What's the 6 represent? Look at your books. Huh? How much money you have. Remember it said you could start with $6. 1.5 represented what? The cost of apples. The 0.6 represented the cost of bananas. Okay, we found the x and y intercepts. Remember, x equals 4 and y equals 10. The intercept is when you solve for x-intercept, the y-intercept equals 0, right? So if I buy no bananas, how many pounds of apples can I buy?
4.
If I buy no apples, how many pounds of bananas can I buy? Make sense? That's why we found this x and y intercepts. Any questions?
No.
All right. On your own, number 5. Put this on your paper. We're going to graph this equation using intercepts. So we're solving for intercepts. 2x minus y equals 8. How do I solve for intercepts?
Number 6. Oh,
Number 5. How do I solve for intercepts? Plug a 0 in. So let's solve for the x-intercept first. If I put a 0 here for the y, I get 2x equals 8, right? Because that y is just gone. Divide by 2, I get x equals 4. Okay, I'm going to rewrite this over here. 2x minus y equals 8. If I solve for the y-intercept, where am I plugging my 0 at? I'm solving for y. So where do I put my 0 at? In other words, I want to keep the y. So I plug the 0 in where the x is. 2 times 0 is? I know. It's the... You can go acknowledge it if you want. Miss Angela's going to do it. You just hit the yellow button and say okay. Okay, so I got rid of the x by plugging in a 0 there. I'm left with negative y. Am I done? Is that the y-intercept?
No.
Why?
You need to get the y.
I got to get that negative out of there. You're on the right track. So y equals what?
Y equals -8.
Negative 8. So do you have your x and y intercepts?
Yes.
Can I graph it now?
Yes.
Let's make these points, coordinates, so that I can graph it. X equals 4, so the 4 comma 0. This one is 0 comma negative 8. So now I have the 2 points I can graph. Rewrite them. This is 4 comma 0. The other point was 0 comma negative 8. So get a graph paper or sketch it, whichever you prefer. All right, so where do I graph my first point?
The -8. The 4.
The 4 is fine. Yeah, where do I graph it?
The,
Which line am I on?
that's the x line.
So, and it's a positive 4, so I'm going to go which way?
The right 4.
Very good. And then the graph the y-intercept, I'm
Down 8.
on the y line and I go down 8. Negative 8. And then hopefully connect them. Woo, almost. So close. All right, that was number 5. Number 6. We have x plus 3y equals 6. Finding the intercepts. Well, let's do the x-intercept first. So if I'm solving for the x, where do I put a 0? If I put a 0 there, what happens to that? It's gone, right? So then you have x equals what? 6, right? If I'm solving for the y-intercept, where do I plug my 0 at? If I'm solving for y, where do I plug my 0? I heard it. Yep, you put it right there. Well, if 0 is there, do I need to write it? So I have 3y equals 6. Get the y by itself. What's 6 divided by 3?
2.
2.
2.
So now make these a point. This is the x value. This is my y-intercept. You guys know why I write them where I write them here, right? Because this is x, this is y. So if we're doing the x-intercept, then the y is 0. If we're doing the y-intercept, then the x is 0. So now we got to graph these. 6 comma 0. What was my other one? 0 comma 2. All right, so let's graph it. Where do I put my first dot?
The 6.
On which line?
On the x line.
Which way?
Right x line.
Very good.
And then you go up 2.
And then I go up 2 on the y line.
Yes.
And then we play connect the dots. Very good. Any questions? What's your question?
It's not relative to that.
Then give me 1 second. Woo! I'm losing my... We're about finished. Okay, we're not going to do on your own number 7, so you only have to have on your own numbers 1 through 6. Then you need to do my screen here. IXL Y12.